Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, episode 17. And this is today's content. We're going to be, as usual, looking at our moon void of course calendar for this work week. And then a lot happened in the financial markets this past week, and very could have been a very pivotal week for in general. And so we'll look at the Dow Jones and gold and Bitcoin and the US dollar. And finally, I was somewhat surprised and needed to look at the astrology of a speech the head of the Bank of England made. His name is Mark Carney. And he made the speech at a symposium that's held every year in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he was talking to, other, big wigs in the financial world. And he proposed, the possibility of shifting from the US dollar as the reserve currency to some form of cryptocurrency. And I'm sure, and that definitely, made the news and raised a lot of eyebrows. So we're going to look at the astrology of that speech. And I was curious to see whether this was some form of deception or whether, it was believable, and if I could, glean some, some information from the astrology pertaining to those questions. Okay, void of course moon. I know every week I have to go into this, but I think it's important. It's not used enough in our world or understood. What is the void of course moon? Well, void of course means the period of time it takes for the moon to move, to transition from one astrological sign to another. Like the moon in its orbit around the Earth goes through every astrological sign in a month. And so every 2.5 days, it's moving from one sign to another, Leo to Virgo, example. And often that transition I'm not going to go into all the details, but that transition usually takes just, 15 minutes on average. However, every now and then it'll take hours, and sometimes even 24 hours. And we will have an example of that later this week. During these longer transition periods, I've noticed in my life, and historically, traditionally, it's been noted in astrology, that there is a shift in kind of the psychology of the collective. People tend to feel a little bit more disengagement. They kind of shift into a neutral zone. And on its own, that doesn't sound too bad. And actually, it's a very good thing to have happen when you can take a day off, when you can regroup, when you can rest, when you can play. We need those time periods. But our world isn't set up, is set up on a 40-hour work week. And sometimes we just cannot go take a day off when it's Wednesday afternoon. But what happens when everybody, including yourself, is shifting into neutral and they really don't feel like attending to the important items on their to-do list? What do you do? Well, these are things that I recommend. Essentially, you want to avoid making big decisions. You want to, if you can, reschedule important business activities. Don't spend a lot of money. Don't buy that car. Avoid signing the contract for that new lease. Wait until it's not void. And don't start important major transitions or stages in your life. Don't get married is the example here. What can you do? Every business has a lot of just maintenance work that needs to be attended to. So shift into the maintenance mode if you see a void of course moon period approaching. Do those lesser secondary things on those days and reschedule the important stuff. Okay, what's happening this week? Well, on Tuesday, August 27th, early in the morning, the moon is shifting into void, and it won't shift out of void until late in the afternoon. So that's a long stretch, okay? Almost all the work day on Tuesday, the moon is going to be void of course. On Wednesday, it becomes void of course late in the afternoon, or this would be late in the evening if it's East Coast time, because we're talking about Pacific Daylight Time here. So this would be 8:07 p.m. So anyway, Wednesday's pretty much fine. However, it doesn't move into the next sign. It's void of course all day Thursday until essentially 5 p.m. Almost 24 hours it is void of course. So all day Thursday and basically all day Tuesday, the moon is void of course. So look at your schedule, see what you've got going, see if something can be rearranged, and be as productive as you can without having, if you can, just avoid those important decisions or those important critical business activities on those days. Okay. Let's look at the markets here because, man, we had some big stuff happening on Friday. And if you haven't looked at this video before, I use both technical analysis and astrology. The astrology here is indicated by the vertical lines. Usually significant things start or major moves happen up or down on these days. On average, sometimes the technicals, the traditional way of analyzing the stuff will override the astrology. Sometimes the fundamentals will be the most important thing. So you have to combine all three. But I have found that the astrology is great because you can look ahead. You can see when something is likely to happen. And then you factor that in to the other means of analysis, and it's a very helpful tool. So, for example, I knew that this Friday was going to be an important day. I've been doing this for 25 years, looking at the astrology. I knew Friday was going to be an important day for the Dow Jones Industrials. It turned out it was a major big down day, okay? So this could be a start of a down leg unless somehow, Trump backtracks on all his tariff talks, or somehow China steps in. Something significant shift in what, compared to what happened on Friday has to enter the picture, or else we're going to see a continuation here. And if this market breaks this blue line, which I feel is a support line right here, we have a lot of air underneath this market where it could continue to drop in a big way. So watch this blue area here. I use TradingView to get my charts. They don't have the specific. I use DIA, which is an ETF. So this is a proxy. But you can, if you're just looking at the Dow Jones chart, you can see this previous low, intermediate low right here is very important in my mind for keeping this market up. And, we do have some dates coming up, but they're really not happening until early September. Let me double check. I'm looking at my notes right here. So possibly a minor bullish energy on Friday, August 30th. And then we might have to look at early the following week. So I see we have several days here where the astrology is not supporting this market, but will be in line with what took place on Friday, which was, as you can see here, a large drop. So let's look at gold, because gold was up. This green line is a long-term trend line, actually based on the monthly chart. And I see that as it was very important, level to go above in order for this bull market to continue. And Friday we saw, a big push upward. And so it just confirms that this market, has legs, it has energy to move higher. The astrology here was, it wasn't highly bullish in my estimation on Friday, but these other factors kicked in. Factors related to Mark Carney's speech, which I'll get into later. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes right now, so just bear with me. So, in reality, I think, we're going to get a continuation, but the astrology continues to be stronger even as we move into September. And that's why I've created the chart in this manner. We don't have a lot of energy here, but it actually gets stronger by the end of September. So this market has a lot of momentum, to move higher. And, it's something to watch. It's definitely a safe haven in my estimation, given everything else that's going on in the world. So silver, again, it's a similar situation. Silver, if you look at a very long-term price pattern of silver, it too has broken out of a long-term downward pattern. And this sort of is almost a breakout in a very short-term pattern here that took place on Friday. This astrology on Monday historically is bullish. So let's look at what happens tomorrow, because, even though the astrology in gold seems to be better when you get into September, tomorrow in silver on Monday, the 26th of August, should really be supportive for this move to continue in silver. U.S. dollar. Okay. Well, the U.S. dollar is valued relative to other currencies, and other currencies are weak, or countries are intentionally devaluing their currencies to promote their exports. And so the dollar stayed high. However, it tanked on Friday. And just the way we have the trend line set up here, there's not a lot of support for the dollar until you get down to this area. So even though recently the dollar, which usually trades inverse to gold, the dollar, they seem to have disconnected over the last month or two in their correlation, this inverse correlation. If the dollar starts dropping, that's only going to be helpful for the precious metals. Just, their historical relationship. So watch the dollar, keep track of that. And Bitcoin, this is a fascinating chart. Large pennant triangular formation is taking place at the moment. And this is, again, Sunday. What is today? 23rd, the 25th. There's a real battle going on to hold that support. And if we can get up to Tuesday of this next week, I think the energy on Tuesday, I'm double checking my chart. Yeah, the energy on Tuesday and Friday would be supportive for the bullish case in Bitcoin. If we break down, it just looks on the intraday chart, if we break down below this support level, it's just going to look bad. And we may have just enough people trading Bitcoin, active professionals, so to speak, who want to make some money on the downside here. And there are some fundamental things going on in the crypto world, like the backed exchange is going to, I think, be open for trading in about a month or 3 weeks. And that, I think, is just in general going to be very bullish for Bitcoin, but a lot can happen between now and then. So, if you're a short-term trader, watch these levels, the $9,900 level approximately. because if we breach that level, we could head down to, 93 very easily. If you're a long-term trader, I think just hang in there, weather the storm, but there is a battle going on. The astrology gets a little better on Tuesday and Friday, so mark your calendars there. If this can trade sideways until those dates, then I think we will move higher. Okay, let's look at the astrology. I'm just curious about this because, I kind of take a lot of what the central banks of the world say with a grain of salt. But out of the blue, here's Mark Carney, who's the head of the Bank of England, who's stepping down here shortly. So maybe he's speaking more candidly than usual because of that. But he comes out Friday around noon. This was a 12:30 Mountain Time chart. I saw a sign in the hotel that he was speaking, noting when his speech was supposed to start, and it was 12:30. So what's going on in this chart? Well, the thing that stands out is that we have the Sun conjunct Venus on that day. I mean, it's been true for a week, but a real focus in general in the world would be on finances, on trade, so forth. It's one of the symbols, meanings for Venus. And so it doesn't surprise me. It's in the 10th house, very public announcement, a very public event related to the 10th house. Scorpio is on the ascendant, and we have the planet Uranus at the descendant, opposing the ascendant. So this event has a strong, symbolism related to Uranus, which can represent kind of a radical, revolutionary energy in astrology, or it's reflecting an event that has those qualities. So it's kind of an unconventional position he was taking as well. Progressive, unconventional. Progressive in a kind of a technological sense. In addition, that energy is in a trine formation with Venus. So it can be tied into the use of money and finances and so forth. And here he's talking about cryptocurrencies, or some form of a cryptocurrency, replacing the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. So that I see it reflected here. His speech is reflected in this, and it seems genuine. And that was where my intent, why I was curious to look at the astrology. The Scorpio ascendant is somewhat questionable because it could imply an ulterior motive to some degree. The ruling planet, though, ends up to be Mars. Mars is ruling Scorpio. It too, though, is in relationship to Uranus in this chart. So that leads me to think that, his proposal, at least, bringing up the topic, can be taken at face value. I mean, that's where I'm led to believe here. The other thing that is happening in this chart is that the moon, Gemini moon, is 90 degrees. Oh, shoot, hang on here. Right, that was an accident. Hang on. Okay. Sorry about that. My finger gets an itchy finger and I hit my mouse button. So let's get back to this. So Gemini moon, okay, was kind of related to making a speech, communication, is squaring this conjunction of Sun, Venus, Mars. And so, the way I see this is that, his speech probably is not well received by his peers. That's my speculation. That's my guess. And so he, he was probably stepping on some toes and ruffled a few feathers by bringing up cryptocurrencies here. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. However, I was looking to see if there would be a strong Neptune in this chart, which could reflect some, ulterior motives taking place. But it isn't really that strong here. It is in sort of in conjunction with the midheaven. However, I don't give that a lot of, credence. So, all in all, I would say that this was a genuine proposal by Mark Carney to look at cryptocurrencies as an alternate to the U.S. dollar, which would have huge ramifications on the U.S. economy, our control over, the financial world, our power in the world, and so forth. So this was a huge, major event, and it kind of could indicate a rift within the coordinated systemic operation of the World Central Bank. So anyway, that's it for now. Again, my name is Stephen. I have a background in psychology and art. Sounds like an odd combination, but that's just me. I've been studying astrology for over 40 years and applying it to the financial markets for 25. I'm a sound money crypto advocate. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. And I do accept Bitcoin donations. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll be back next Sunday. Thanks.